So this is part 2 of our lecture on subordination. And remember, subordination is how we connect dependent and independent clauses. And we've talked a lot about what independent clauses and what dependent clauses are. Where we left off, we were talking about one of the two types of dependent or subordinate clauses, which is the adverbial, which I call transforming clauses to try to simplify. Remember, they're the ones where you have an original independent clause, you add a subordinating conjunction, and you combine the resulting dependent clause to the original independent clause. And there were two ways to do that. One was to put the dependent clause before the independent clause, in which case you need a comma because the dog ate dinner, he was not hungry. And the other is to put the dependent clause after the independent clause. The dog was not hungry because he ate dinner. And in that case, you don't need the comma because the subordinating conjunction is strong enough on its own. So now we're going to talk about the other kind, which are adjectival subordinate clauses. And these are about adding extra information about a noun in a sentence normally, or something that's functioning as a noun. But you don't really want to create a whole new sentence. So the man who is older than me is my father. I don't need a whole sentence that says the man is my father, period, he is older than me, period. It's just easier to integrate it into the original sentence. I'm making this presentation, which I hope helps you. I need several things from the store, such as milk, eggs, and bread. Sometimes you just want to add a little extra information, and it's easier to connect it to the independent clause than to make a whole new sentence. There are a lot of different subtypes of these, and I just mostly refer to them as non-essential elements to make it easier on everyone so that you're not memorizing 25 different types of adjectival clauses. They all kind of work the same. So to test if a clause is essential or non-essential, there are a few things you can do. One is to look for trigger words, and the most common ones are who, which, and such as. In fact, you almost always need a comma before which, with the exception of when it starts a question. Such as, same thing. If you're using such as for a list of items, you almost always need a comma before it. You can also check where the dependent clause or the non-essential element comes in the sentence. If it's either going to come after the independent clause or it's going to interrupt the flow of the independent clause. And finally, you can read the sentence without the additional information. If the sentence still makes sense, then it's non-essential because it can stand on its own without the extra stuff. If it doesn't make sense anymore, it's part of the independent clause and you don't need to worry about it. It's just part of the independent clause. So punctuating non-essential elements, and again, these are technically called adjectival clauses. If it comes after the independent clause, you place a comma at the end of the independent clause. So for example, I'm enjoying this book, which is good because it's required for my class. You can see the word which triggers this non-essential element here. You can see that it comes after the original independent clause, I'm enjoying this book, and that the sentence would make sense without it. I'm enjoying this book. You could, in this case, this is a weird case. I don't know why I chose this sentence. I'm enjoying this book because it's required for my class. But then the sentence doesn't really make as much sense because you're not enjoying it because it's required for the class. It's a good thing that you're enjoying it. So that's why there's not a comma here, because that actually is part of this thought. Non-essential elements can also interrupt the independent clause, meaning they can come in the middle of it. So in that case, you're going to place some commas on both sides of the non-essential element. So here we have one of the trigger words, who. We've located it in the middle of the sentence. And so now let's try taking out that part in bold. Dogs have been a part of our lives for nearly 40,000 years. It works, therefore the extra information is not essential. And therefore, because it's not essential, we put commas on both sides of it. So now I want to recap, because I know we've gone over a lot, and I just want to go back over it just to reinforce it. Independent and dependent clauses are joined through subordination. Subordinate clauses come in two main types, adverbial and adjectival. Adverbial clauses I called the transforming clauses, right? They're an independent clause that becomes dependent by adding a subordinating conjunction, and they normally come either before or after an independent clause. And remember, the easiest way to determine a subordinating conjunction is process of elimination. Have those fanboys memorized, and then if it's not a fanboy and it comes between two independent clauses, it's probably a subordinating conjunction, or at least functioning as one. Adjectival clauses were those non-essential elements. With those, you kind of want to look for those trigger words. Who, which, and such as were the ones that we talked about, although there are others. These are not essential to the meaning of the sentence. They're extra information. And they either normally come in the middle of the independent clause, or they come after the independent clause. And so that's everything on subordination that I feel like you need to know right now. There is more to it, but I think that kind of going into all those details and exceptions is going to confuse you, and really it's not that important. The chances that you're going to make those errors are very small, and the chance that you're going to have any points taken off your grade down the line is really not very high at all. So you can get points taken off for not putting the comma after an introductory adverbial clause, though. So since that's something I know people tend to look at, I wanted to focus on it. Same with, having your commas before which. I know a lot of teachers do like to take off points for that. So I wanted to kind of focus on the things that were going to be highest impact for you, getting you into the next levels. So again, that takes us to the end of this presentation. We're going to do some guided practice on correcting errors with sentence structure and comma usage in a few minutes. Yeah, hope you guys have a great day.